So what's going on, man? I haven't seen you in church the past couple Sundays. What have you been up to? Well, I've been doing a little bit of shopping. Shopping? For like what? Like underwear? Pfft, underwear. Boy's a free baller, man. Love the freedom. Scares the hell out of my wife. Yeah, makes her nervous. All right. Well then, like, what are you shopping for? I'm just shopping for a new religion. New religion? I thought you were a Christian. I am Christian. But, I'm just shopping around. I've been kind of thinking what it would be like. I drive by a lot of them, and I just, I don't know. I don't know what the best one is. I don't know what the perfect one is to get me to heaven. I just don't know. I feel like I should just try them all out. See which one I like. Interesting. So, like, what are you thinking? Well, I got the beard now. Kind of been getting into woodworking a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the Quakers, maybe the Amish. That could be a thing. Like, I don't know, maybe I was thinking about, like, maybe just checking out Lutheranism. Like, when he nailed the things on the door, like, I can't really blame him. I think he had a few good points. Maybe I just want to go sit in there and see what they have to say about it. Interesting, yeah. Well, have you ever asked yourself this question? What would Jesus choose? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unscripted Faith, Episode 5, Shopping Around. Okay, here we go. What would Jesus choose? Yeah. Wow, here we go. It's going to get interesting. I was thinking the other day. I know, right? Shocker, like me thinking. Because all I do is just sit around and think about things. Yeah, I mean, my hobby is thinking. So, it's not too bad. But anyway, I was thinking the other day about what would Jesus choose when it came to Christianity and where we are currently at. I went on Google, right? I Googled it. Did a little Googling. And I asked Google, how many different denominations of Christianity are there? And Google spit back at me 45,000 different denominations, right? Now, lumped into that are the big ones. You got the Protestants and, the Catholics and the Orthodox and, so on and so forth. And then a lot of new storefront churches. I love that term, storefront churches. It's like, let's just pop up a church. A little storefront, maybe like a little coffee shop church. But yeah, 45,000 different denominations. And it made me, I don't know why I Googled it, but I did, but it made me really think about that. And it brought me back to some thoughts that I had when I was a little kid. Not really a little kid, I'd say more like a teenager when I was starting to come up in the world, right? And let me tell you guys a funny story, right? So, Sundays growing up were always different in my house, right? And my dad's footsteps were different on Sundays, right? And I'll tell you what I mean by this. So we all knew what mass we had to go to Sunday morning. Usually Saturday we would talk about it. Like, hey, what do we got going on? Well, he's got a hockey game. She's got a volleyball game. This and that. I have this, whatever, so on and so forth. So it's like, okay, we're going to go to the 9 o'clock this week. What? I don't want to go to 9. I got to wake up early, Dad. Come on. I don't want to do it. No, we're going to 9. Everybody, we're going to 9. I don't care. Right? So I'd get up and then, I'd be sitting there watching TV or something. And I knew it when he hopped in the shower. Right? I didn't know when he hopped in the shower, but I could hear it, right? And then I'd hear that shower door slam the bathroom door slammed shut. And I would hear him come down the steps so fast every single Sunday. It was like, brrrr. He never came down the stairs that fast, ever. Didn't matter if he was late for a flight. Didn't matter if he was late for a meeting or whatever was going on with work or what we had to do. But on Sundays, it was like a stampede. Brrrr. And as soon as he made the turn around the stairs, it was like, go time. Drop what you're doing and get in the van right now. You better get in the van. Right? You're not in the van, you're going to be in trouble. So it's like, oh crap, here comes Dad. So it's like, we're all running, putting our shoes on, I'm like tucking in my shirt in the car, sort of a deal, or on the way to the car. And then, like pushing my sisters out of the way, like, get out of here, I'm going to be first. I want the captain's chair. Right? So we all fly out of the house. My dad's in the driver's seat, right? And then my mom was always the last one out. That's just like the routine. The kids were always the first one in. She was always the one that shut everything on her way out. And our garages were so tight, right? We had a 2-car garage, right? And you literally had like this much walking room between the cars and the walls. So imagine all the bikes, all the trash cans, all the rakes, all the fishing rods, all the hockey sticks. So my mom would come out because her car was always on this side of the garage, right where the door was. That's just how it worked. And she would come out, she'd be the last one. So she's like trying to like shimmy her way, like, you know what I mean? Like through the small little gap she had. And it's like, the bike handle gets caught in her jacket and then she has to go back, fight that. Purse getting tangled in like a fishing rod or a hockey stick. So she's got to go back and untangle that. And finally she would make it out of the garage, right? And by this point we were all in the car. And as soon as she made the turn, like around the back of her car, he had one of those like code things, or the button was on kind of in between the 2 garages. My dad timed it. So he'd be on the wheel. And as soon as my mom was close enough to hit the button to close the door, he would let go of the brake. So he'd begin his 3-point turn simultaneously to save a few extra seconds while the door was closing, because we don't want to be late. Can't be late, right? Of all the things we were late for, we never try to be late for church. And it'd be hilarious, man, because we'd all watch the garage door be going down, 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 down. Then all of a sudden, because it had the little like radars on it, the little sensors, the tripwire thingies, it would hit or stop this close before hitting the ground and then just shoot back up, right? And it was an old slow door, so we're all sitting there like, oh, Mom, what's up, right? All the sensors are off, so then I'd have to hop out of the car. And it's like, I'm trying to rub the eyes off of them so the laser can connect, and we're trying to twist them and turn them. I'm like, how many times I ding those things? On a weekly basis, like taking slap shots in the driveway and just dinging one off of those, or bringing my bike in and out. It was like somebody always kicked it because he only had this much room or ran over it. So it's like, the beam is probably shooting up this way and we're trying to like get it perfectly across so we could just get the dang door down. Everybody's freaking out. My dad's like halfway down the driveway, like, if you guys aren't in the car, I'm leaving you. And then finally we'd get that sucker down. And we would cruise, you know what I mean? Like, usually we were early, but it was on the late days that it was the funniest. And that's when, you had the problems with the door. Like, literally, like, we thought, like, I would think, like, or Lucifer or whatever, like, the devil's there himself, like, door would come down, he'd be like, sort of a deal. But anyway, it's amazing. You're flying to church, I want to roll in a stop sign here or there. And then the worst was, like, we had to make a left turn into it. So like if you timed it wrong, there was a whole line of traffic that came from the opposite direction because of the light, and it was on a busy street. So it would just back up. So it's like, you're sitting there waiting to make your left turn. And like my dad would just like sometimes like white knuckle it. He'd be like, whoa, we're in the back seats going like, whoa, flying in, getting there. And here's where I'm going with this story, right? Is that throughout all my life, whenever I drove to church on Sunday, it didn't matter where I was. So whether it was at my house, the home pew, the away pew, the traveling pew, whether it was in Ohio with my grandparents or on vacation or traveling anywhere else, I was always interested in And it shocked me how many different churches I would pass on a Sunday just to get to my church, right? So here I am as a kid sitting in the back seat looking out the window, and it's like, oh, there's the Lutheran church, and you see the families getting out doing the same thing, right? You know, dad, mom, kids. And on Sundays, right, they believed that they were right, right? So they believed that they were right. And then you pass the Baptist church, the Protestant church, or whatever it was, you know, the Presbyterians, and so on and so forth down the line, right? So it's funny, like on our drive to church, I would always pass different churches, and everybody on Sunday getting out of their cars thinks that they are part of the right solution, right? Get to heaven, this is the right way. And it's funny because we all don't live under rocks, right? Like, I mean, if you're a Lutheran, you know what Catholicism is, right? Me as a Catholic, like I know different religions and stuff. Like, you know, I researched them, I learned about them. So it's like, you know, it's just so funny. And then I thought about it. I was like, aren't we all supposed to be like just Christians? And like, where did we go wrong here? Right? And it's like, it's almost to the point where it's like you need to shop around in order to like find the perfect solution for you to get your soul to heaven. And I always found that, you know, very ironic. But I also thought about how, you know, Jesus, I believe, gave us simple divine wisdom and simple divine truths, right? It's almost like he came down and he had this like crystal ball of like really good wisdom, right? He's like, I got this, man. This is really good stuff. Yeah. Like simple truths, how to live a good life, opening relationships to God, all that good stuff. Like if you want to be a good human, this is where we want to start, right? On the spiritual side of things, right here. And he knew it, but he also knew that he wasn't going to be around for a while, right? So he took the ball and then he passed it over to Peter and his apostles. And he was like, guys, going away, but I am trusting you with this wisdom that I taught you. Your job is to keep passing the ball around, right? Keep spreading the wisdom, right? And it's interesting because to me it seems super simple, right? You got to be a Christian before you could be a Lutheran or a Protestant or whatever, right? You have to get back to just the basics as far as what being Christian's about. And it's funny because I think one of the biggest errors that happened to the purity of that message was when man got a hold of it, right? Now, hear me out on this. Now, I'm not saying like, you know, St. Peter or, you know, the apostles didn't know what they were doing, but it's funny because they were humans, right? And every single human is going to have human error associated with the decisions we make. Whether you like it or not, there's no such thing as a perfect decision. And we saw that. You know, you saw that with Peter, like literally like 1 minute standing up for Jesus and the next minute denying him, right? And if Jesus saw that, he was like, dude, I got to make this simple for like people to be able to follow. Because if I make it too complicated, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. It's going to cause too many problems. I want to keep it simple. Boom. Let's do this. And then down the line, when man realized that, it's like now everybody wanted to get their hands in the cookie jar, right? And the interpretations, I think, started getting lost. And people started to fight over those interpretations, right? I mean, way back in the day, you had like the great schism. Like, think about it. Like, we're arguing over whether we can use unleavened bread or leavened bread to reenact the Last Supper in church, where it's like, does Jesus really expect us to reenact the Last Supper every single Sunday? Or was it just like a one-time thing? Like, guys, this is it. Like, this is going down in history. Let's move on with our lives. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but that's kind of the stuff, you know, I think about. And I think about how much human error has been associated with the 2,000 years that we've been trying to interpret what Jesus meant. And that's the key word there, interpret. Because the only person that knows is Jesus, right? And it's one of those where all we can do is interpret what we know best. That's all you can do. Like, you have to read it and you have to like be able to figure it out, right? But then all of a sudden it's like this. And this is where it gets really interesting, because we feel that a lot of times we don't have the power to be able to do something like that, right? We don't have the confidence to be able to say, oh my gosh, I could actually like take what little I know about Jesus and that's all he really expects me to do and I can figure this out for myself. A lot of times we don't have the confidence. So we feel we need to latch on to people who are more of the experts or organizations or institutions because we just can't figure it out. So it's like, you know what? If they got the experts, they can figure it out. And I think everybody forgets about the error that's been associated with that. And there's perfect examples in history of that error, but we all turn a blind eye, right? And it made me realize that on Sunday, billions of Christians walk into a church, and automatically, when they do that, you're casting a vote to what you believe is the right way, or the group that has it figured out the best, right? And I thought about that, and I was like, you know, from my own experience, you know, as a Catholic, every time I walked into a Catholic church, it was like, I'm giving them the vote that they got this figured out for me. Like, I don't really need to figure it out for myself because I'm trusting them to figure it out for me. And so on and so forth down the line with all these different denominations of Christianity, right? And I saw that and I was like, you know what? That's kind of weird. Like, why can't I just like vote for myself, right? And whoever votes for themselves is like, dude, you can't vote for yourself. Selfish. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like, you know, if I was going to run for president of the United States of America, I'm voting for myself. I'm giving myself a vote that I could do a good job, you know? And it's just kind of funny how I saw that. And I saw that my whole life. Like, even in my internal family, right? So like on my dad's side, both my grandparents, my grandma and grandpa, were Catholic. Easy. Now, on my mom's side, my grandpa was Catholic, but my grandma was Lutheran. And I always thought about that growing up, and I was like, man, how does that work, right? Like, why didn't she want to become Catholic, and why didn't he want to become Lutheran? Like what's going on there? You know, and I never really pressed them too much on it because I already kind of understood, you know. Yes, my grandma, you know, and she just gives you like one of those great grandma answers, like, God's in your heart, and it just makes you melt, and you're like, man, grandma, is it that easy? Come on, give me your secret, you know? But it's just so interesting, the differences, and where do the differences come from? And for me, the only way I could think of the differences is just how we've interpreted and how we vote for other people to have a better interpretation than our own, because maybe we just don't feel confident enough in order to be able to decode what Jesus is saying to us, right? Which I think is pretty simple. If you just focus on Jesus and what little we know about him and the simple truths he puts out there, I think he made it simple for a reason, right? But that just really really opened my eyes. And I'm going somewhere with this. And it's going to be good because I have a conspiracy. No, I don't have conspiracies, but I have thoughts, right? So getting back to that, you know, it's almost like if Jesus popped up today, what religion would he choose? So if he walks down a street, I mean, he's got the Lutherans and then the Presbyterians and then the little Calvary Assembly of God and then, you know, the synagogues and the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. Something inside me says on the Sabbath, he probably would just keep walking and make people come out of the church to follow him. Does that make sense? So like imagine that, right? Imagine there's a street lined and there's churches, 45,000 different churches all down the sides of the street. Okay? Jesus comes back. Now, I don't want to pretend like I'm in the mind of Jesus because I'm not. I mean, look at me. Who am I? You know what I'm saying? But it's an interesting perspective, right? would Jesus walk into one of those churches, or would he keep going to make everybody come out of the churches in order to follow him? And I think when you look at it that way, it's almost like he brings everybody out of the church to follow something greater than the church, but we're oftentimes too afraid to follow it. And the fear keeps us going back to a place where now we can just kind of be like, oh, they're going to take care of it for me, you know? Because, and it's really interesting, because like if you were an independent Christian, let's just say non-denominational, just the guy who wakes up, finds just amazingness in trying to figure it out for himself, right? Can go to the church when he wants to go to the church. The church is always there and it will always be there, just like it's always been since pretty much the beginning of man, right? There's always been some sort of communal place to gather. But he enjoys having his coffee, laying the Bible out, and then figuring it out on a Sunday for an hour, right? And is that enough? I don't know if that's enough. But that guy or girl has the ability to walk in to any church that they want and not feel bad about it, right? Because they're almost above, in a good way, of the building, right? But it's like, man, if I was a Catholic and on a Sunday I go to like a friend of mine's Lutheran church, or vice versa, or if like I'm a Lutheran and I go to like a synagogue, like I feel like I'm committing treason against my own religion. It's just weird. It's like, why would you want to do that? You know? And I don't know why I felt like that, but I felt like saying something with all the differences going on. Nobody ever pays attention to the differences, right? I'll give you a perfect example. We've gotten to the point where Christianity, I believe, used to be the trunk of the tree, right? But now we're getting to the point where everybody is just so focused on the leaf. And when you focus on the leaf, you miss the branch. And when you miss the branch, you miss the tree. And when you miss the tree, you miss the roots. And then when you miss the entire thing, you miss all the glory that's the forest, right? That's right there. It's right out there. But we are all so focused on looking at that one little leaf. And that's what we associate with that one little leaf, right? So now I'm going to ask you guys something. I don't know if you agree with it or not. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I was thinking another thing the other day. I go, with this amount of fracture within Christianity, so like, I think it's perfectly simple. Jesus gives it to you, you go out, you live it. And you figure it out for yourself, and however God calls you to understand it, that's you, right? That's your soul. Nobody has the same two souls. It's going to be different for everybody. But I was thinking, with the amount of fracture within Christianity right now, what a clever way for the devil to strike. Now, I don't know if you guys believe in the devil, right? I mean, I do, right? But I don't look at it as like the guy with the points going like, let's get him. You know, and he's sitting there with his little pitchfork jamming. I don't believe it that way. I believe it's the opposing force to good, anything good, right? So you can't have love without hate. You can't have good without bad, so on and so forth, right? So I believe evil exists. Now, what better of a way for the devil to 100% attack the divine purity of Christianity, right? The divine wisdom left, by causing it to fracture. And how smart is that? Where now Christians are pinned against Christians. Right? Shouldn't it just be one? But look at the fractures, all because of the difference of interpretations and the human error associated with it. So I was like, man, that devil is smart. You know, I mean, gosh, how good is that? You know, here I am as a kid driving to church on Sunday, looking at people at different churches, and I'm thinking I'm better than they are. Not necessarily like that, but I'm just like, man, they got it wrong. What if they got it wrong, right? And it's all based off of just like 4 little gospels that pretty much say the same things, just in different ways. And it's not hard, and it's super simple to understand. But that thought right there really made me go, wow. You know, and I've never heard, well, I'm sure somebody else has thought of this. I can't be the only guy. But nobody in my circles has ever thought of it that way. Nobody's ever seen it that way. Nobody's ever said anything that way. But I know that everybody thinks it. Not necessarily the fracture part, but I mean, as soon as you walk into a building on a Sunday, you're casting a vote. You know, and is God really up there going, look at you today. You haven't been here for 4 weeks. Your shirt's untucked. What the heck's wrong with you, man? Ding, 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 ding. You know, and I don't know if I can honestly say that. You know, but I mean, think about that. The devil pinning Christians against Christians out of something so simple only a human can make complicated, right? It's so simple. Only humans, because we're good at making things complicated. We are good at screwing things up, right? That's just part of human nature. We're going to get it wrong more times than we actually get it right. You know what I mean? And it's like, golly, even the simplest of things I think we could screw up. Now, that's not to say who's right, who's wrong. That's just how I feel. And for me, it's hard for me to pick a side. It's like, man, I want to be able to go everywhere. Like Jesus, man, I just want to be able to walk. I don't want to think that I'm wrong or I'm right going into here or not going into here. And I don't want to do that. I just want to walk a path, you know, do what I can. You know, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there. And what does that mean? Right? Like, could it be that simple? Like, you know, I thought about that this past Sunday. It's like, you know what? You get the Bible out, pick a parable. I'm sitting there with my kids, my wife. We're reading it. We're talking about it so the kids can understand. It's like, man, is that enough? Is that enough? Is that how it was meant to be? Something so simple you could just keep going with it and go anywhere and do anything. I don't know. But I think that devil is very clever, you know, because how many religious arguments are there right now? Just within Christianity. I'm not talking about, you know, getting into other stuff. We don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. At least not today. I'm not that well versed. But, you know, you just look at the bickering that goes on with the same people that believe in the same things. Interesting. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Gave you something to think about, you know, but yeah. You know, I like making the videos. I'm going to keep doing it. So, like if you like, subscribe because you want to. Catch you next time. Oh, and I almost forgot. Keep the faith.